Today we're going to be talking about Lionel trains. Not so much about the engines themselves, but mostly about more of the track that we deal with. And this is a very beginner's guide to this stuff, so this is very non-technical. This is for somebody that's going to start building their train, or just bought a train, wants to set it up, pulled one out of storage, and wants to play with it. The first track we're going to talk about is this o-27 track, which is pretty much the oldest track there is to be used. Then we're going to talk about the O-gauge track, which is still a three tube rail train, tubular track. Then we'll get into this fast track material that was the next evolution in trains, and we can talk about the bonuses and negatives of them. First thing to realize that our o-27 track, you can see, has the exact same width as the O-gauge track, and the same width as the new fast track, so that's all the same. The difference is between the O-gauge and the o-27 track, of course that's going to fall. Let's see if I can get this out. Is the height of the track. That's a problem. Now, the o-27 trains will run on the O-gauge track without any issues. As we can see here, here is the O-gauge track, an o-27 train. Then it goes on to the fast track. Runs perfectly fine on that. This corner makes me a little nervous. And we can stop the train. So that's not a problem if you have to go to this O track or the fast track to run your o-27 train on it. I have ran this style locomotive that comes with the remote control on the o-27 track itself. I don't know how well that is for anybody else, but I have done it and haven't had a problem with it falling off. But you must realize that the voltages are different between these two trains. This is a constant voltage, where your voltage, once it plugs in via transformer to a connector like that on the fast track, this stays at one voltage all the time. And the train's controlled by a radio controller like this. This o-27 track is powered up by a transformer. It's an AC system, and the more power you put to the track, the faster the train goes. So that's definitely a difference and these aren't going to be interswappable with each other. So we can put our power supply back onto our standard o-27 train, and we can run this one. So, as we can tell that we moved the transformer lever up and the train moved a little bit faster to get around that corner. Now we can definitely tell by looking at this, the o-27 track definitely does have a smaller curve, because I have here two of the 45s to make a 90, and I have a straight track and two more of the 45s over there to make a 90. Here I have the fast track, and I have two 45s, a piece of straight track, and two more 45s to make the loop, and you can definitely see the difference in area it takes up over a piece of 8 by 4 foot plywood or OSB, and it makes me nervous how this hangs over so close. So that's definitely a consideration when you're buying track, what physical dimensions you have, because that definitely is a big limitation of how much room you have to set your train up. Now, with our track, unfortunately, adapting the o-27 track to the O-gauge track isn't exactly a plug and play. Adapting the fast track to the O-gauge train, you can buy these right off the shelf, plug them in and go. So if you end up getting, that's one style I bought. Here's another one I found. But they do pretty much the same thing. So if you have a bunch of this fast track you got with a kit, like this model train comes within a kit, it comes with some of this fast track, and you want to go ahead and adapt to the 3-tubular because you have some, or you can possibly find some, or whatever reason, that is definitely a possibility to do that. You can interchange them. The o-27, I have not found an adapter to go from the o-27 track to the O-gauge track. I'm sure ways you can do that. We might look into it later in the series. Also, I want to show there's two different type of connectors. There's this style connector that just kind of clips in place and pops on and off like so. Looks kind of like that. They're okay. Then we have this other style connectors that have, you can see, two little pins that stick up, and those slide directly into the gaps on the bottom of the track. These are a lot more secure. I kind of like those better. So you can do that route. I know I'm probably forgetting something, but in the next videos we'll talk about modifying some of this track and the positive and negatives of each and what we can do with it. Okay, we're back at the second segment of this thing, talking about track, the positive and negatives of the track. And I think you can obviously tell the o-27, the physical size of it, is a huge benefit of the area we have to work with over the O-gauge track, being that it's much larger. And then fast track. The fast track actually makes a even wider swing than the regular O-gauge track on top of it. So that makes it a lot wider. So that's, again, depending what you want. The big benefit to this fast track that I find, it's still readily available. The problem is there ain't enough out there on the market, on eBay and online stores like that, or yard sales or whatever, to make it cheap. You still have to buy it new. One benefit though, if I plug this in, I have that direction to make my curve. If for some reason I want to turn this and make it go the other way, a little tough to get these lined up, but it's a simple boom, and now I'm going the other way. So that's a nice feature of it. So if you have the 3-rail system and we want it to go this way, but then decided we want it to go the other way, I already put pins in this end. If there wasn't pins there, we'd have to end up pulling pins out at one end to the other to make that turn. So that's definitely a little more challenging to do. So next, another thing I want to talk about, and you can buy these fast track pieces shorter, different sections. I don't know all the variables of how short you can get or whatnot. The nice thing I think with this fast track, let me see if I get this down. Oops. That was a fast drop. Is if I want a shorter piece, like this piece would have been nice if it was a little bit shorter, so my train didn't hang over as far. I can unlimitedly cut this to whatever length I want by simply taking a T-square, putting on a track, measuring where I want it at, and simply taking a hacksaw and cutting it. So unlimitedly amounts of space to make this track on the fly is perfect. Now I can also cut the 3 rails or the 45 pieces as well Makes it a little bit more harder to do. And when you start snaking around buildings or layouts, it's definitely easier to cut this down as you go. Even over short pieces, if you cut and don't have the rail system hooked together, it's not going to make that difference over a couple inches if that separator's there or not. So that's definitely a few advantages to the tracks. Also, I find advantage to this track, or the o-27 style track. If you're laying this out and you need just a little wiggle room, you can kind of flex these just a little bit more out of them over a rung, which isn't really good for the electrical connection. And if you have issues, you might have to take two of the connectors and go ahead and jump these together to make sure there's a good electrical connection during that. But it is possible. This fast track, once you click it together, there is really very, very little wiggle room to this style. So I think personally using a 3-rail system to get that little extra oomph out of here and there is worth it. So that's what I'm going to focus on, mostly the 3-rail. And a 3-rail can easily also modify, which we'll talk about modifying our track for different purposes. Because once we get further into our trains, we're going to probably want to do more than just watch them go in circles or ovals. We're going to be able to split stuff off, trigger things like crossing guards, lights, stuff like that as we move on with our display. But definitely the next thing I'm going to have to do is get some more plywood and expand this out. We'll go from there.